only did it grow over the last 40 years, as wages stopped rising, of course, where would workers' income go? They couldn't grow. Their wages were flat, but they were becoming more productive all the time. The last 40 years are the computer, the robot, artificial intelligence, all of that. Workers' productivity goes up. Workers' wages are flat. Wages are what the employer gives you. Productivity is what you give the employer. If what the employer gives you is flat and what you give the employer keeps rising, guess what? You have inequality. You're taking all your growing output and giving it to one small class of people. Employers are 1%, 2%, 3% of our population, if that. They get it. Even across COVID-19 pandemic, inequality got worse. And what did we do to the working class after we gave them 40 years of losing everything, their families falling apart, their position in American society, their growing wealth, a kind of affirmation that somehow you're doing better? All of it's taken away. Then we hit them with COVID, then we hit them with an inflation, and now we're hitting them with rising interest rates. Let me frighten you, if I may, if what I've said hasn't done that job already. There is an example in history of another working class over a small number of years being hit with economic blows on a scale of what's happening here. The example is Germany, and here's how it works. In the second half of the 19th century, as the British Empire is declining, the United States is not the only competitor looking to replace the British. There is another one, Germany. World War I defeats Germany. Britain, with its allies, defeat Germany, throw them out of the competition, wipe them out, impose at the end a reparations they couldn't possibly pay. The German working class, which had been built up across the 19th century to believe it was creating a whole new globe. In German, it's called das Deutsche Reich. That's like the German Empire. And it had, territories in Asia, it had territories in Africa, and so on. All that was smashed when the unthinkable happened in 1914 to 1918. Germany was defeated. The empire was taken away, literally. The British took the colonies in Africa away from the Germans and made them British colonies. Everything for them destroyed. It was a trauma for the German working class. It ended in 1918 with defeat. Within 4 years, late 22, early 1923, literally a century ago, Germany then experienced the worst inflation in modern times anywhere in the West. In a period of 9 months, the German currency went from 6 Deutschmark to the dollar to 4 trillion Deutschmark to the dollar. Prices doubled over weeks at a time, every hour of the day. Any savings accumulated by a German family, and they were very frugal, were wiped out. 6 generations saving money, had enough money put away to buy a quarter pound of butter. They were done. And 5 years after that, in 1929, the Great Depression hit Germany. It was too much. You cannot hit a working class, even the German working class, which was the best educated, most productive, and most progressive working class anywhere in Europe. No contest. Even that, it was too much. And in 1932, those German people, overwhelmed by what they had been put through, turned around and supported a little Austrian with a black mustache, Adolf Hitler, and you know the rest of the story. We're just living out, here we go, the same sad scenario. Denial, not explaining to people the foundation of what they're assuming, not talking honestly about its disappearance, the cracks, what it means when your empire has that fun ride up begin to be replaced by the much less fun ride down. We're in very deep trouble. For the last half century, we have benefited enormously by the fact that there's one international currency, money. It's the US dollar. It's as good as gold because it literally functions like gold. That's over. Ukraine simply speeds up the process. China, Russia, now Saudi Arabia, Iran, Venezuela, and many more countries are signing up for another international currency, and it shouldn't come as a big surprise whose currency that is. It's the currency of the People's Republic of China. China shows all the signs of a rising empire, matching all the signs of a declining empire here. You may not like that information. You may be upset by it. That's your business. But to pretend it isn't there, let me give you just some numbers. I'm an economist. We do that. One of the things we do as economists is we look at the size of an economy to gauge relative economic power. And the number we use, it's crude like all numbers, but it gives you an idea. It's called GDP. It stands for Gross Domestic Product. It's a measure of the output of goods and services in one calendar year. So it helps us if we look at it and we measure it, and it's measured for every country on this planet. It gives us an idea of the relative size. Okay, let's now do a comparison of three countries, Russia, China, and the US, to get a sense of their economic wealth, their economic power, their economic footprint, if you like, in the world. To give you an idea of, and if you didn't know this, think about what that might mean. So I'll start with Russia. The GDP, most recent year of Russia, it's about $1.5 trillion. The GDP of the United States last year was $21 trillion. Do you understand? Russia has never been, and is not now, anything like a serious economic competitor of the United States. It never was. It never came close. It may have had some nuclear weapons to worry about. It may have had political influence, but as an economic unit, only people systematically denied the simple statistic I just gave you could believe that. Russia has $1.5 trillion GDP. The United States alone, 21. You know who has a bigger economic footprint than Russia? Italy. The United States is allied with Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and many other countries against Russia. If you put them all together, it's like 30, maybe $35 trillion against Russia with 1.5. What are you talking about? A war? This is a war between David and Goliath, and you're not going to be happy with who is playing which role. Think about it. Now China. What's the GDP of China? Ready? $17.5 trillion. That's a competitor. Not Russia, China. That's the empire emerging. Not Russia, China. And why? Easy to explain. Over the last 25 or 30 years, annual growth of GDP, how fast is the economy growing? Here in the United States, 2%, maybe slightly more, 2.3%, somewhere in there. Let's be generous, 2 to 3%, US, average annual growth. China, average annual growth, 6 to 9%. End of conversation. That's why China went from being one of the poorest countries in the world to being the competitor of the United States, one of the richest. You know what it's like? It's a story a little like the colony in North America being a place for furs and then becoming the new empire, so that the roles between Great Britain and its colony were reversed. Now Britain is our colony, as any honest appraisal of the relationship between these two countries would immediately acknowledge. In Britain, one of the most common jokes you can hear is that when the United States tells Britain to jump, the response of Britain is, how high? It's a question.